Hey guys! There are many incredible and educational stories about ordinary people and their actions, about kindness and faith in one's own strength, and what motivates these heroes and what they experience every time they change someone's life. But there are stories that cannot be explained. We can only tell you about them, but we can neither understand nor shed some light on them. Today I'll tell you a story about twin brothers, which has baffled modern science and remains a mystery to this day. I'm sure it will surprise you as well. It all started back in 1939, when two boys were born in Piqua, Ohio. It so happened that the twins were born to a poor girl who was only 15 years old at the time of the twins' birth. The young mother understood that she wouldn't be able to feed, let alone raise two children properly. Despite it being very painful for her to abandon her babies, she still decided to give the boys up for adoption. And when the brothers were only 21 days old, they got separated. One of the boys ended up with the family of a young couple who lived in the same city, but his brother went to a family from the city of Lima, located 100 kilometers away. As it was later established, the adoptive families didn't know each other and thus couldn't keep in touch. Moreover, both families knew that their boy was one of the twins, but they were both convinced that the other boy died in labor. Jumping ahead, I'll just say that it was only by chance that this secret got revealed. But first things first. Both boys had the most ordinary lives. They were no different from all the other kids. They went to school, graduated from college, began dating, and started their own families. They both lived their separate lives, not even suspecting that they had a twin brother. And no one would have probably heard this story, and the boys would have probably passed away without learning the truth if it wasn't for one incident that turned their world upside down. One day, when Lucille Lewis, the adoptive mother of one of the twins, was at the courthouse getting some documents, she accidentally overheard a rather strange conversation between two employees. They were filing documents and talking about a case. Lucille heard a familiar name, and although it took her a little while, she did remember that it was the name of her son's birth mother. She also overheard that the other boy was alive. What surprised her most was that his name was Jim, same as her son's. Putting together all the facts, she realized that the other twin has also survived and got adopted by a different family. It was hard to realize that my son had a brother. I often wondered about how he lived and whether he was doing all right, Lucille said later. But at the same time, I couldn't. I didn't have the right to interfere in the life of someone else's family. It should also be mentioned that Jim's parents never hid from him the fact that he was adopted. He also knew that he had a twin brother, but for some reason, he only decided to search for his brother when he was 39 years old. To collect as much information as possible, the man turned to the district court where his adoption documents were filed. The court employees were very empathetic for the man's story and began searching for information about his brother. Jim expected this search to take months, but to his surprise, some 3 weeks later, he got a call. And another couple of days later, the brothers met for the first time. And it was then that this story took a very unexpected turn. I will always remember how worried I was before meeting my twin brother. I went to Dayton thinking that in just a little while, I'll get to meet my closest relative. I was so nervous I couldn't sit still. But the moment I saw my brother, I calmed down completely. I don't know why, but I didn't feel like I was meeting a stranger, even for a split second, Jim Lewis said later. The day they met was definitely most important for the brothers, but it also became important to thousands and maybe even millions of other people around the world. This amazing story caught the attention of some scientists, so they decided to study the twins' biographies, learning about their hobbies and other parts of their lives. What they found out was shocking, to say the least. Many of you might feel like asking, so what is so surprising about this story? But as it turned out, the answer is quite simple. Everything about this story is surprising. Even though the brothers led completely different lifestyles and never saw each other, even though they were raised by different families and grew up in different conditions, it didn't prevent them from living virtually the same life. It all began with a simple coincidence. The boys were given the same name, Jim. Things like that happen, right? But then there was more. When the boys were still young, they both fell in love and married their girlfriends. But the surprising part is that their wives had the same name, Lena. They both had problems in their marriage and got divorced at the same time, as it turned out. Strange, isn't it? And that still isn't all of it. When the twins got married the second time, you can probably guess, right? They once again chose women with the same name, Betty. Comparing pictures, they realized that their wives didn't just have the same name, but they also looked very alike and even had similar tempers. These facts couldn't but surprise the scientists, so they decided to delve deeper into the twins' lives. The twins' new family lives were going pretty well. Soon they each became a father to a beautiful boy, and once again, it was identical. First, the children were born in the same year and even the same month. Second, they both named their sons Alan. The only difference was that one name was spelled with a single L, while the other was spelled with a double L. But they still sound the same. So the names were James Allen and James Allen. What can we say? Even when the brothers were still children, they both had dogs, whom they named the same, Toy. As for their education, both brothers preferred math and exact sciences, and neither of them liked spelling. It would seem that it was already enough to realize that they've led the same life, but they were similar in even the small things. For example, they preferred the same kind of beer, smoked the same brand of cigarettes, they had the same favorite drink, and even food. Both men worked as deputy sheriffs, and they both drove a blue Chevrolet. When it came to traveling, both twins preferred to vacation in the same state of Florida. They even went to the same beaches, but somehow, they still never met before. This resemblance of the brothers' lives was definitely shocking to many, but remarkably, each of them used to say that they always felt some sort of emptiness, which only went away after they finally found each other. The most attention this story got from Thomas Bouchard, a psychologist who tried to study it in as much detail as possible. After a while, he concluded that genes really do influence intelligence greatly, but many other psychologists and physicians disagree. After all, it was previously believed that when children are born, they're like a blank slate on which anything can be written. The twin story, however, undermined the familiar and generally accepted concept. As for the brothers, it was interesting for them to learn more about each other, so they didn't mind the various studies, even though they didn't really get to see each other a lot during them. There were many tests, but it wasn't just the psychological questions, but also various physical exams and even x-rays. It turned out later that the twin brothers gave the same answers to all the questions and even drew similar images. All of this didn't just surprise the scientists, but had them truly baffled. After all, when one takes a pencil, there are endless possibilities of what they can draw, and nonetheless, the twins' drawings were almost identical. One time, they asked us to write a story based on one drawing, and even our stories ended up being very similar. If you think about it, there are millions of possibilities, but we still wrote the same thing. The scientists later said that they had a feeling as if it was one person taking all those tests instead of two different people. They just couldn't wrap their heads around it. How was that possible? As for their health, the Jims often suffered from headaches, and they shared one bad habit, biting their nails. During the experiment, both Jim Stringer and Jim Lewis gained some weight, but they still ended up weighing the same, which amazed the scientists even more. The fact is that my brother and I have a lot in common, but there is one difference. We've chosen different hairstyles, Jimmy Stringer used to say with a smile. Bouchard later said that if he hadn't had a part in this study of two completely different people who grew up in different conditions and different places, he would have never believed these coincidences were true. He simply didn't understand what was happening and how it was even possible. All the experiments were open for the media. The journalists would often interview the brothers, and during one of those interviews, one of the Jims said, "We can come one at a time, but each one of us will say the same thing anyway." Since the moment Jim and Jim reunited, they've been seeing each other every day. They even bought houses in the same neighborhood. Today, the twins are over 80 years old. Their adoptive families both said that if they had known that the second child also survived, they would have been so happy to adopt both boys. Unfortunately, they were both lied to. So that's the unexpected and somewhat mysterious story of two Jims who lived two seemingly different lives, which turned out to be incredibly similar. No one has yet been able to give a clear answer. How is that possible? It seems that we don't always truly understand what goes on with us, yet we try to understand others. So friends, what are your thoughts about this story? What do you think? How could this be possible? Be sure to let us know what you think in the comment section. This is it for today. Rate our video if you liked it, and see you soon. Bye!